Hey everybody, it's Jessica. So I am back, as always, along with the awesome Lovewell Foundation. And this month's topic is something that I just thought would be interesting, especially with school getting ready to start in the next few weeks, at least down here in Florida. It starts very soon. So I kind of wanted to just bring this to everyone's attention, just kind of what to watch for, because I've seen unfortunately, a big increase in adolescents and self harm behaviors. And I think that, starting school, all these increased stressors, especially with the pandemic, unfortunately, kind of starting to get worse instead of better. We might be seeing still increase in all of these things, anxiety, depression, and along comes with that some self harm concerns. So typically we see self harm in adolescents, like I said, generally between the ages of 12 and 18. Middle school to high school age kids. Typically females more often than males, and that's just a gender thing, probably related to, again, how males tend to externalize, whereas females tend to internalize. So, um, so females just typically feel more anxiety and then take that on themselves. So, first of all, self harm can be really anything. It's not a suicide attempt. So, those are two different things. So, that's something that you should know. So, it is non suicidal self injury, is what you'll hear it called, NSSI. But self harm can be any kind of harm or injury that they inflict upon themselves, most often cutting. You will see patients who have scars or just superficial cuts up and down their arms, sometimes on their thighs if they're trying to hide it better. So they'll use anything, razors, they'll break plastic, they'll get knives from the kitchen, scissors. So cutting is really very popular. I've also seen burning. So sometimes they'll take a lighter and light it until the metal on the lighter, top of the lighter, gets hot, and then put it on their skin. Sometimes if they smoke, they'll take a cigarette and they'll start to put it out on their skin, or they'll use matches. Um, Sometimes people will just use fingernails and scratch until they bleed. So there's all different kinds of ways to self-harm. Those are just the ones that I commonly see, but really, I mean, it can be any self-injury that's not a suicide attempt. So overdosing, those kinds of things, those are suicide attempts, completely different thinking. Mostly people who self-harm are not necessarily suicidal at that time. Um, they are often trying to alleviate anxiety, stress, get relief from some kind of feeling, and they don't have any healthy coping skills. They don't know how to get rid of those negative feelings in a positive way. So, what they find is when they harm themselves, whether it's cutting or burning or any other type, they get sort of a release. And their brain does actually start to give them this emotional kind of relief feeling. And the downside of that is, just like anything else, they can sort of become addicted. So this cutting and self harm can become, an addictive behavior, almost like an obsessive compulsive behavior. So that's why it's dangerous for several reasons, but that's one of the main ones. If they start to get this kind of addictive feeling towards the cutting, so then whenever they're having a bad day, whenever they're feeling low, they will engage in this behavior. Their brain sends out these signals that they feel relief, and that just, again, feeds into that addiction cycle. Um, so the people that, like I mentioned before, are high risk: adolescents, ages 12 to 18, mostly females, but males do this too. It doesn't mean they don't, it's just a little bit smaller number of males than females. Typically, why do they do it? It's hard to say. Everybody does it for different reasons. Most often, what they tell me is that they feel a release. So, a lot of times we see this with people who have a lot of anxiety. So, they're super anxious, and the way they feel release is to cut themselves and see themselves bleed, or just feel the pain. And for whatever reason, it gives them this big feeling of release, relaxation. So if they're in a situation that's very, very high stress, exams week at school, or a relationship problem, broke up with a boyfriend, fought with a girlfriend, etc., you know, that can definitely set them up for risk for self-harm. They usually have some definite depressive symptoms as well: low moods, low energy, lack of motivation. They're feeling all these things. So for them, it's a way to sort of feel something to alleviate the negative feeling that they're experiencing that they don't know what to do with. I think a lot of the problem with adolescents too is that they're kind of at a risk of not having the language to be able to describe what they're feeling. They may not realize that what they're feeling is agitated or anxious or depressed. They might feel like they're the only ones that are experiencing these things, and so it's difficult for them to bring it up and talk to other people. So some things to look for that may be signs that someone is self-harming. You may see scars or just superficial cuts, all in different phases of healing. Like I said, a lot of times it's on the upper arms, sometimes on the inner forearms or thighs, sometimes on the stomach, and occasionally the ankles. So places that are usually covered by clothing. So what you might notice is in the middle of summer when it's 85 degrees outside, they're wearing a long sleeve sweatshirt. Or they're maybe wearing long pants and socks, even though they're outside and normally would wear shorts. So if you notice that they're wearing clothing that might be hiding something. If they're having difficulties in their relationships, whether it's with friends or, with a boyfriend or a girlfriend or any other partner, that can kind of put them at risk as well. If you notice they're keeping sharp objects, in their pockets, you find pocket knives, razor blades, you notice that, scissors are missing, anything like that. I'm trying to think of what else. Emotional instability, they're crying a lot, they're flying off the handle, being super irritable. Anything that's kind of out of character could give you an indication that something's going on. They often don't talk necessarily about suicide. Specifically, they may make comments about, I wish I wasn't here, or, everything's just hopeless, I'm nothing, I don't even know why I was born. So maybe comments like that, that's got this overall maybe talk of death without specifically saying that they are thinking about suicide. Some people think that self-harm is a suicide attempt that didn't work, but that is not the case. The goal is just to cause injury and get that release and that feeling from it. It's not to die. Obviously, one of the risks of self-harm is they cut too deep, they don't know what they're doing, and they cut in the wrong spot, and they do end up, in a situation that could be life-threatening. So that is always definitely one of our concerns and one of the risks. So, because it's very possible that they'll need stitches or, even more. So we always want to be mindful that these situations can get out of control quickly. So we try to talk to people, we try to discuss the urges, the triggers that cause the urges to self-harm. Most of the time, we treat them with antidepressants and, cognitive behavioral therapy to discuss the underlying problem, the anxiety, the depression, the stress, so that they can identify those triggers and then learn how to cope with them in, more healthy ways. The other problem that can come in is that they're typically not using sterile things to cut themselves with. They're using razors that they get, out of the shower, things that they find, in the kitchen or what have you. So infection can be an issue as well. So if you notice those kinds of things, I would definitely, question, where these cuts are coming from and things like that. One of the best things you can do, again, educate, talk to your kids, tell them that it's okay to have these feelings. It's okay to feel sad sometimes. It's okay to be anxious. Teach them that they can come to you or, go to anyone, an adult, a friend, a counselor at school, or that you're happy to find someone that they are comfortable talking to if they aren't comfortable discussing it with you. And just let them know that there is help out there and that they're not alone. I think that's really a very common theme that I hear from the adolescent group when I see them is that they feel like they're the only ones that have these feelings, that so something must be really wrong with them. And, usually it's a very common thing and they just aren't aware of it because we don't talk about it. So the more we can talk about it, the more we educate, and let them know that we're comfortable, as healthcare providers, teachers, parents, friends, that we're comfortable with them coming to us to say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. Like, is this totally weird? What do you think? And that we don't react by saying, oh my God, don't ever do that again. That we react in a way that's therapeutic and that's helpful. And then we get them to where they can get real help from, whether it's a psychiatrist or a therapist. That's what we need to be teaching people, that we're not going to freak out when somebody says, hey, I felt bad and I cut myself and I felt better. Is that, what's going on? Is something wrong with me? No. You just need someone to talk to you to figure out why it's happening. So if we can encourage those kinds of conversations, that's really the best thing you can do. Just make it so that this stigma is just not obvious and not as apparent to these younger people, because they need to learn those tools to be able to cope. Because when they get to be adults, they need to know how to cope with problems. And, the best way to do that is by talking to a professional. You may need some medication temporarily, but those are all things that are kind of individualized and based on what's going on in their life at the time. But I think the key is to make them feel comfortable and know that there's someone there that will support them no matter what they're feeling. So, anyways, as always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or if you have anything you would like to hear me talk about in an upcoming video, let me know. And you have my email if you need anything, and I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.